Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So today what we're doing is we're going to start potting up our tomato plants. Now these are my starts, and if you look, they're looking kind of rough. Basically they've been in the greenhouse, but they got a little cold, and so you can see some of the leaves are slightly damaged and so on. We're going to go ahead and pot them up. I'll show you how we go about doing it. Alright, so there's a couple ways that you can start off with this. One, you can get a setup like this, which I did not buy. I want you to know I would not buy this. But these are peat pots, and they come in a little package like this, right here. And my daughter had a friend who's moving and couldn't take a bunch of stuff with them, so she gave up these. So I'm going to go ahead and use them. I mean, they'll work fine. They should be no problem. And in fact, the nice thing is that the pot is actually you just put the whole thing in the ground when you put them into your garden. But peat is not a very, it's not very sustainable, okay? Peat moss is something that is a problem for various reasons. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot here today. That's not what I'm here to talk about. What I want to talk about is how to go about potting up your plants. So whether you have these, or like I've got some other stuff in the greenhouse, I've got some Swiss chard that I'll probably do something similar to this. There's a couple of reasons why you would pot them up. So if it was nice weather out right now, I would just take these and put them directly in the ground, and I wouldn't need to pot them up. But because I started these earlier, and I want them to get basically a good size, I want a nice healthy sized tomato before I put it in the ground, I want to go ahead and pot them up. Now a couple things you can use to pot them up. You can use old pots that you might have laying around like this one, or you can do what I've done here. I went and bought these are the Walmart version. I want to say a couple of bucks for 25 cups. I've drilled holes in the bottom of them so that they will drain. And the nice thing about these is, like, what I'm going to be doing is a lot of these red cups that I got, the Great Value cups, are going to be giveaways. So basically these are either plants I'm going to give to my kids, or I'm going to give to friends, or I'm going to give to whoever. And I don't want to spend money on something like this necessarily if I'm going to be giving it away. Now if you're selling it, that's another thing. Maybe you can add that into the cost of what you're selling. But I just didn't want to go out and buy a whole bunch of pots, and these are easy to come by. You probably got some in your closet, or not. But anyway, so with that being said, so a couple of things that I do, I'll show you here. Like for instance, if you have a set of tomatoes, and you do like I did, once again let me show you. So in this particular cell here, I have 3 tomato plants growing. Now I can do one of two things. Like I can take and I can cut it back to where I've only got one. Like in this cell here, I'll probably leave that one there, and I'll just cut one back. So now that's one tomato plant gone, so I have 1 tomato per cell, and then it'll get up about, you know, a good size within that, with that amount of dirt, and still be okay because there's only 1 plant per cell. But when you have multiples, like in this one I have 3, because I sprinkled seeds in, and that one I have 3, what's going to end up happening, they're going to start being limited in their growth because of the amount of soil for that 1 plant. So what you can do with that is that's when you can start potting them up. And what I'll do is I'll take and I'll squeeze around the sides all the way around, push on the bottom, and then it should be able to slide out pretty easily. Now you can see that there's quite a bit of roots. It's not quite root bound yet, but that's 3 different plants in there. So then I'll take that and I'll try and crumble away very gently the soil that I can, trying to maintain the roots without breaking. And you'll get some breakage, but as long as you have a good chunk of roots, it'll be fine. So I like to do it this way, and I probably shouldn't have watered these as recently as I did, but I'll show you why. So if I separate them out this way, what will happen is, at least theoretically, and this does work a little better with drier soil. Well, actually there's 4 plants in there. Bonus. And then I'll slowly tease them apart, trying not to break the roots. Shake them a lot, like so, and you'll get most of the roots to come out. Now one of the nice things about that is when it comes time to set them down, when I set them down onto the dirt like so, those roots spread out a little more. Alright, and so there'll be more root in more areas. Or you can, you know, actually take them and split them out and set them like so. Alright, The other way to do it, a lot of people like to use water. The problem with the water, they do come apart a little easier, I think, maybe. But when you go to put the plant into the dirt, you basically have a line that doesn't want to separate very well. And even if you really try, it's kind of difficult to get them to spread apart without damaging the roots too much. Alright, so I prefer the dry method a little better, but a lot of people like to do it this way. And then you can just take, like if I've got my little solo cup here. So when I do this now, you can take and cut, oh, lost my scissors. Well, you can cut off these baby leaves if you want. Now I would recommend scissors, but for some reason I've lost mine. Aha, he says. Alright, so you can take the scissors and cut back the baby leaves. Very gently, just snip them off. Alright, and then you can plant this all the way up to where the leaves start. Now the soil I'm using here is just my garden soil. Oh, we don't want that. And that is dollarweed. It's my garden soil combined with some compost. And then various other soils that I got laying around here and there. Thus the dollarweed. Alright, this is just regular garden soil. And then I'm sprinkling it in around the sides as we go along, because I don't want to just glop it all in at once. And then kind of pull up a little bit as you go so that you get the plant to the level you want. But even though this had about 3-4 inches of stem down to the previous dirt, I'm going to plant it up to the point where basically all you got showing is the leaves. Now when should you pot them up? Well, I know a lot of people say you need to have X amount of true leaves and all that. Alright, so when you look at a tomato plant, let me see if I can get a better example. When you look at a tomato plant, like this is the baby leaves here. These are the true leaves. Alright, so some people say you want X amount of true leaves and so on. I've had good success even when it's just baby leaves, though you're probably better off at least getting them about that big before you pot them up. Okay, so again, I just sprinkle the dirt in, and then I'll come back a little later on and water it. I do like to have the soil a little bit moist. You can see it's a little moist in there when I do this, so that I don't have to worry about it. And then they will settle somewhat, but once they start growing up, you can always add more dirt. Because tomato plants, you can plant them all the way up to the leaves, and all the little hairs along the stem. Once again, if you look at all those little hairs along there, all right, those can turn into roots, and it'll root all along that stem there. Okay, so that's one way to go about doing it. So there's a couple of them, and the nice thing about the cups or these pots, either way, is you can just write directly on the cup. Particularly if you're going to be giving them away. Like this is a purple Cherokee. That's a purple Cherokee. Alright, and then on the peat pots, you can do the same thing, which is what I've done there. Alright, it's not going to hurt the soil if a little bit of that gets down into your soil, the ink itself. Very minimal amount of ink. Now then, like I said, the other thing you can do, like with these that have only got one single plant per cell, I'll just leave them in there. And in fact, if you want to separate them, you can even take this, put it back into the cell in the same position it was before. But these I'm going to go ahead and put into these pots over here. So I've got basically 2 packages of these. That'll give me 16 tomato plants, which should be more than enough tomatoes for what I want. So I'll do 4 of each variety. I've got 4 different varieties that I'm planting, and then I'll probably buy some others as we go along. Now, how big can you let these grow in this pot? I mean, they'll get up to about 6-8 inches tall and still be okay in this pot if there's only one. And it's perfectly fine to go through and just trim back the ones you don't want and just leave the ones that you do. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and split these out we'll see how many I end up with, because I want to get a few, like I said, that I can give away to friends and maybe take to plant swaps and so on. Now, where to keep them? Tomato plants are very sensitive. Anytime tomatoes get below 40 degrees, they're going to start to get ugly, which is what happened here. All right, and I've got some others that are in even worse shape. I let them get down into the 30s, and that's not a good idea. You want to try and keep them warm. So if you have a greenhouse, it's a great place to put them. If you don't have a greenhouse, not here in Florida, you can bring them out during the day and put them back inside during the night, but of course that involves moving your plants around. You can get roll-around stands that do it fine and so on, but you want to keep them above 40 degrees. And that's most plants. I mean, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, if you keep everything above 40, it should be okay. Alright, so that's what I'm doing. That's how I'm going about potting up my tomato plants. And then, like I said, one of the advantages of having so many in each cell is that I can split them out, and then I can take and actually have those as swap plants or as backup plants. So if I put these out too early and they die off, but I've still got 6 or 8 more plants stashed in the greenhouse, then even if it freezes and kills all my tomatoes, I've got a backup plant. I've got some extra tomatoes to go with. Now, you can do this with a lot of different plants. I've got everything from bok choy, tatsoi. I've got some cucumbers I'm trying to get started in pots just to get a head start. I've got what else do I got? I've got some Swiss chard, peppers, and so on. And either method is fine. If you're not looking to trade, then I would just go through and do the snip thing, where you just go in and you snip off the plants that you don't want. And listen to airplanes go by. Like I said on this one here, that's the best looking one. I'll just take that one and then just go down and snip off the other 2. Now you've got 1 plant per cell. I like those 2. I'm gonna pot them up. They're looking really healthy. All right, and then you can always come back and plant more in here, more seeds if you want to, so that you got others starting again from scratch, and then you'll have varied heights of tomatoes. But that's how I'm going to go about potting up my plants. It's definitely time to get to thinking about it. It's the first part of February. We've got about a month until the expected last frost on March 7th. So you want to get these plants as big and healthy as you can before you put them out, so that you have less problems with disease, you have less problems with bugs. If I get these plants to where they're about that tall, I won't have to worry about cutworms, whereas something this size, a small cutworm, can come in and take that whole plant down. Alright, so it's time to start thinking about potting up. If you haven't got the supplies yet, maybe go out and buy yourself some solo cups. Again, the dirt is entirely up to you. This is my dirt mixed with my compost. I think I want 8 shovelfuls of regular dirt with 4 shovelfuls of compost. All right, and that's pretty much the mixture I'm using. You don't need to sift it like I did with the potting soil, because the plants are already grown, and this is primarily what they're going to be living in. So I think it's also a good idea to start your plants with what they're going to be living in. If you have super rich soil and then you put those plants down into not so rich soil, then the roots are going to want to stay where that nice rich soil is, and they won't necessarily spread as well as they should. Whereas if you're using pretty much what you're going to be having your pots or your plants in the garden, I think that it'll encourage more root growth. Alright, so anyway, thanks once again for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe if you like it. If not, well, let me know. Give me a comment. Let me know what you think I'm doing wrong or what I could do better. Otherwise, stop back by when you get a chance, and most importantly, grow something.